Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for me to release the stage for who I would describe as the superstar of day one. This person is going to come and speak about and deliver a tri-talk on the topic of seen, heard, included, what real inclusion looks like for youth. Her name is Bontle Motatsa. She's the National Strategy to Accelerating Action for Children representative for children and adolescents. Having served as the Representative Council of Learners President for the Northwest in 2024, she has engaged on child rights and well-being across national and international platforms. She has written for the Daily Maverick on the importance of meaningful child participation in shaping policies and systems that affect young people. She is currently a student at Northwest University, and she is standing by to share some of her brilliance with us this afternoon. Please help me welcome Bontle Motatsa to the stage.
Thank you so much, MC. Good afternoon, everyone. By the way you clapped hands for me, I do know that you are happy to have me, and I am happy to be had. Now, when we often refer to South Africa as the Rainbow Nation, right? And it is a term that was first coined by Archbishop Desmond Tutu and later elaborated on in the early democratic period, including by President Nelson Mandela as a vision of a nation of many colors, many histories, and many voices. A rainbow, ladies and gentlemen. Now, when we look at a rainbow, we tend to take it all in at once, right? And we assume that we have seen all that it has to offer. What we do not always do is look closer, because within each of those colors are variations, shades that are less visible and often overlooked until we intentionally choose to zoom in. And it is in that space, ladies and gentlemen, of what we assume we have seen, but yet might have not, that my conversation with you today sits. Now, all of you in this room represent the visible spectrum as decision makers, funders, and implementers. You are the voices that are seen, that are heard. But I, ladies and gentlemen, stand in front of you as part of that spectrum that is not intentionally and consistently zoomed into. And that part is the South African youth. And now this brings us to inclusion. Inclusion is often understood as being present. It's understood as presence, being invited into the room, being seen, being acknowledged, and having a few people shake your hand before you leave. But when measured by that yardstick, ladies and gentlemen, and in that form, it can often become symbolic. It can be participation without influence, visibility without power. Meaningful inclusion, however, is something else entirely. It is participation with influence, where young people shape priorities, inform decisions, and define outcomes. And the distinction is very crucial, because what we have deemed as inclusion can and has become, in practice, tokenism. And we see this in the number of conferences, consultations, panels, and reports that are centered around youth inclusion. We see it in the policies and frameworks that kept on reiterating the importance of youth participation and the importance of youth voices. We even see it in the commitments that we have made as a country. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, despite this, As young people, we are often brought into spaces when decisions are already made and consulted without any clear influence on outcomes. We are consulted as a matter of the process only. And we must note that young people participating is not just a matter of good practice. It is a matter of principle. Because, ladies and gentlemen, South Africa, you see, has ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which gives children and young people explicit rights to participate in decisions that affect our lives. Participation, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, is not a favor that should be extended to us. It's not a favor that is just extended. It is a right that requires implementation. So the question, my beautiful people, is no longer whether young people should participate, but it is how that looks in practice when that right is taken seriously. And it looks like, ladies and gentlemen, for example, what has just been talked about here. It looks like education, quality education for that matter, being accessible to all South Africans, irrespective of which demographic they belong to. It looks like socio-economic and political challenges being addressed from their roots, as we have said the whole day, and those roots are in communities. Roots that are unique to every community and how they grow. And when young people and their communities are able to design the solutions to those challenges, it is then when we see improvement. Because in many ways, ladies and gentlemen, involving young people is similar to involving communities. Because as young people, we exist in the intersection of generations. We carry with us the realities of the present, the influence and cautions of our past, as well as the responsibilities of the future as South Africa's is. And when young people, ladies and gentlemen, are included, we are able to translate also ideas across age groups, across languages, and across lived experiences. So when we are included, those policies do not just remain on documents, and the conversations that we have, the information we share, do not just remain in boardrooms like this one, but they are able to move into communities, as I said, in ways that that community uniquely understands it, is able to trust it and act upon it. And when this happens, ladies and gentlemen, this is where now we will be able to see real ownership. And when there is ownership, there is accountability. Where there is accountability, there is sustainability, and what you'll be most interested in, a return on your investment. Now, without that participation, the opposite is true. Programs designed without youth often lack context. They struggle with uptake, and they fail to sustain impact. When that happens, what remains is what looks like success on paper, because what we always write is always clean and wonderful, just like our policies. But then, in reality, what we have is well-funded guesswork. Because programs designed for young people, without young people, are not solutions, they are assumptions. Any program, for that matter, designed without the people whom it affects are not solutions, they are just assumptions. Yeah, and yet, ladies and gentlemen, we must be considerate, and I must be considerate, of the fact that not all young people have the equal position to participate. Not all of us have the language. Not all of us have access to such formal spaces, nor confidence or the exposure to participate in structured programs. But that must never be an excuse. Because when we only rely on insight from those who are accessible and articulate, like some may say I am, what we are doing is choosing convenience over meaningful inclusion. So what this dilemma, thank you. So what this dilemma then reveals to us is that meaningful inclusion is not something that just happens by default. You do not rub a lamp and then ask a genie. It is something that has to be curated carefully. And it requires us to move from normal consultations and to engage with young people in their contexts. To understand that insight does not always come in polished language. And therefore, we need structures. Hence, we have frameworks like the NSAAC, the National Strategy to Accelerate Action for Children, the National Youth Policy, and also platforms like the Y20 and the Children's Forum under the South Africa's G20 processes. But however, and even other programs that you may have, even these very frameworks cannot function in isolation. They require alignment between government, the private sector, and civil society. They require investment and collaboration, as well as moving from support in principle to action in practice. And this means, ladies and gentlemen, this means designing for young people, not just designing for young people, but with us. It means, ladies and gentlemen, ensuring that such engagement are not just once-off things, but that they are continuous and we get feedback and there is correct monitoring, even by us who are involved in it as young people. It means that there is active action taken to resource participation in a way that it is accessible and sustainable, and that loops are created to keep us informed and to show us how our inputs are influencing these decisions. Because when young people are not informed and are not kept in the loop, when there is no follow-through, we are able to see that it means our inputs are not important to you, that they do not matter. And ladies and gentlemen, we must also recognize that for there to be meaningful participation, what we need is not just all of these programs. What we need is tolerance, accountability, collaboration, and a willingness to work across generations. Because working as one, working together is not something that is meant to replace certain voices. It is a process that is meant to make sure that we build together. And then, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us back to the idea of the Rainbow Nation. If, ladies and gentlemen, we're not willing to do this, then the Rainbow Nation will remain just a vision and not something that we realize in South Africa. Because for us to achieve it, we need to work as one, not in silos. Because a rainbow, ladies and gentlemen, is not made only by colors in isolation. It is formed by the blending of light. And in the same way, nation building requires us to connect, to collaborate, and to ensure that all of us are visible in the change and actively. And us as young people are not separate from this process, ladies and gentlemen, but we are the bridge. We are the link between community and institutions, between present realities and future outcomes. And when we do that, ladies and gentlemen, when we work as a real rainbow does, when we blend together as that light blends to create all those beautiful colors, it is only then that the South Africa's Rainbow Nation emerges. It is only then that our rainbow nation emerges. Thank you so much.